guys, and welcome back to another episode of Twisted Tuesdays True Crime and Mystery Stories. Tonight we're going to dive really deep into a true case that shook the nation in a small town. Very sad. This is one of the most chilling and truly sad stories that I've researched for this series so far. This isn't just a murder story. It's a story about trauma, betrayal, and survival, and also a broken system that created a killer. There is some graphic content that's going to be in the story, so viewer discretion would be advised. Alright, let's get into the story. It was supposed to be the most peaceful place in Georgia, a tiny town named Santa Claus. It was a town just under 300 people, but street names were cheerful and festive, just like Christmas. Neighbors knew each other by name. The town's population was small, and in the early hours of December 4th, 1997, all of this joy would turn into horror. In a house that was filled with love and fostered hope, a cold-blooded killer destroyed an entire family. A family that had once did everything in their power to help him and save him. The true story of betrayal, trauma, and a Christmas massacre that left a town shaken to its core. Alright, we start with Kimberly Marie Daniels. She was born in 1959 in a small Georgia town that seemed as unstable as her family life. It was known for drug use, crime, and violence. Her mother, she was a teenage runaway. She suffered from a mental illness, and she bounced between foster homes herself. And her father was listed as unknown on her birth certificate, and she never met him. But by age 2, Kim had been removed from her mother's care permanently for neglect. From age 2 to 18, Kim would be tossed around in over 30 foster homes. Some were overcrowded, some were abusive, and none of them really worked out really too well for her. She slept in closets, she was beaten with rods, and to other people, she just seemed like she's a lost cause, people would say. But they did say she was also resilient, and that she had once said that she couldn't wait to become a mother herself, so she would never abandon her children the way she was abandoned. She aged out of foster home at age 18, and she worked multiple jobs, earned her GED, and seemed to be getting her stuff in order. Then she met Danny Daniels. He was an Army veteran who gave her a lot of love and stability, which is what she really needed. Well, they got married in 1981, and they started a family. And for over 15 years, they fostered over 60 children. That's a lot, including Jerry Heidler. She nurtured every child like her own, showed them love, and especially Jerry. She believed that she could save him from all the trauma that he had been through. Danny was her husband, and he was the former Army mechanic, quiet and methodical, and the kind of man who preferred fixing things over talking. He met Kim at a night class for adult education. She was brash and guarded, but kind, he said. They fit together like puzzle pieces, and he had been waiting for that for a long time. Danny's childhood was the opposite of Kim's. It was stable, but very strict. He had grown up in a deeply religious household where discipline was prioritized over affection. So he didn't really get a lot of affection from his parents. As an adult, he was very gentle, though, and soft-spoken. He and Kim shared a dream to create a family and give the kids the life that he never had and she never had. So they started out with one child, then another. Soon, their modest home in Santa Claus, Georgia, sorry, the name Santa Claus, it's too cute, became the safest place for abandoned, abused, and neglected kids. They raised over 60 foster children in 15 years, while also raising their own biological children as well, including their daughter Jessica and son Bryant. Each child who came through their doors was given structure, warmth, and a lot of love. Kim was known for her fierce love, and she wouldn't give up on people easily. She'd confront abusive birth parents head on in court, and she would fight for custody, and she even adopted 3 of them. So then came Jerry Heidler. a broken, volatile teen who needed a lot more than love. And they tried, gosh, they did try for 2 years, and they went through a lot with him. But before he became a murderer, Jerry Scott Heidler, he was a child, felt left behind by society, by his parents, and a system that never intervened. Born in 1977 in Georgia, Jerry's earliest memories were of fists, screams, and just cigarette burns, some horrible stuff. His mother, Glenda, was addicted to painkillers, and she frequently disappeared for days at a time. She also had a lot of boyfriends come in and out that would abuse Jerry, and he was often locked in his room or locked out of the house overnight. Neighbors reported seeing Jerry around age 5 or so, just walking down the street barefoot, dirty, and talking to himself. One social worker's note from 1985 read that he's shown signs of prolonged emotional trauma, flat affect, nervous tics, hostile tendencies, at risk for later violent behavior. But even though the social worker said all this, the case was closed and nobody followed up, which they really should have. The school provided no escape for him. Jerry struggled with reading and really didn't, because he was in and out of foster homes so much, he really didn't stay in school that long. And he had constant behavioral issues. And he was diagnosed with severe oppositional defiant disorder by age 9. Teachers would call him dangerous, and students would flat out avoid him. And he actually stabbed another student with a pencil and drew blood and broke skin. So, kind of scary, age 9. But by middle school, he had been in juvenile detention already multiple times. He assaulted his mother during a meth-fueled argument and even tried to burn down the trailer they lived in. So he was sent to a group home, and then he ran away from that group home, and that's when he met the Daniels family, Kim and Danny. Well, they did everything they could to show him love. They brought him into the family. He would go to church. He would eat family meals. He would do chores. But the behavior problems came back, and due to those behavioral problems at age 17, he was kind of kicked out of their foster home as well. Well, he was taken by the social workers. But he did not see that as a sign of help. He saw it as betrayal. And that rage festered. So when he would return to Santa Claus, Georgia, months later, it was not for reconciliation. It was for revenge. So, the night of December 4th, 1997, it was a frigid Thursday night in Santa Claus, Georgia. The town's holiday lights twinkled along the streets, and inside the Daniels home, a soft glow Christmas tree bathed the living room in red and green. Jessica Daniels was 16 at the time. She had just finished wrapping presents, and Kim was checking on the children to make sure everyone was asleep. Danny was watching the TV in the den, and everything felt normal and safe. But at 3 o'clock a.m., that peace was shattered. Jerry Heidler had been watching the house for hours, armed with a shotgun and a .22 caliber revolver. He quietly entered the house through the back door. He had cut the phone lines, and he knew the house better than anyone else who might know the house at all. And the first person he encountered was Bryant. He was 8 years old. He came downstairs for some water. Jerry forced him at gunpoint to sit in the living room. Then he moved down the hallway. He entered the master bedroom where Danny and Kim slept. Danny stirred just enough to see the silhouette of Jerry's figure before a shot was fired. He immediately rolled over to try to cover up his wife and protect her, but another shot rang out and it went through both of them, killing them instantly. Jessica, the daughter, she was awoken by the gunshots, and she met with him in the hallway and begged him to stop. But he shot her right in the chest, and she fell instantly. Jessica was dead instantly as well. In the guest room, 16-year-old Bryant was hiding under the bed. Jerry entered and fired twice. The boy died before he could even scream. It's horrible. So only the 2 younger children were left, and Christopher and Frankie. They were unharmed, but Jerry would kidnap them both. He pulled the boys into the car, still in their pajamas, and sped off into the night. I can only imagine the horror and how scared these two young boys were going through after watching their parents get murdered, their siblings get murdered. I mean, they had to have thought that this is going to happen to me next. But he just drove around with them. And they stayed trembling in the back seat of the stolen sedan and drove through back roads, pine-covered routes from Santa Claus. It was still pitch dark, and they had no idea where they were going or why their siblings and parents had been murdered. Jerry didn't say much to them, and when he did, it was terrifying. He would say, like, "Don't scream, I'll kill you too, and you'll disappear too," and things like that. He drove for hours, crossing county lines, changing direction multiple times. I really don't think he knew what he was doing after this. He was probably kind of in shock and didn't really know what to do with the boys. I don't know why he didn't kill them too, but I'm glad he didn't. Anyway, meanwhile, back in Santa Claus, the crime scene was drawing law enforcement from across Georgia and the nation. Georgia Bureau of Investigation agents arrived to help process evidence. Neighbors were crying on their porches. No one understood how such a massacre could happen in such a peaceful town. So by 10 o'clock a.m. the next morning, the FBI had been called in. And local and national media were picking up the story. 2 children missing. A quadruple homicide had occurred in a town with fewer than 300 people. That doesn't happen a lot. The narrative was horrific. A family who helped raise a troubled teen came back to murder them in cold blood. Tips flooded in, helicopters searched rural areas, Amber Alerts flashed on signs everywhere, all over the highways. And about 4:45 p.m., about 13 hours after the murder, a state trooper spotted a suspicious vehicle near the Okanofi swamp. The driver was acting erratically. When the officer pulled him over, Jerry tried to flee on foot, leaving the boys in the car. Christopher, he was very brave, beyond his years, jumped out and flagged down the state trooper. "He has a gun," he yelled. So, that was very brave of him. Jerry was tackled, arrested, and taken into custody. Inside the car were weapons, duct tape, and rope, along with school photos of the Daniels children. He must have just felt really betrayed. Even though it wasn't the family's fault, they tried to do everything they could. I'm sure maybe he believed in it for a little bit, and then when he had to move out of the house, he just wanted revenge. But the Christmas killings of Santa Claus were no longer a mystery. They knew who did it, and the town would never be the same. In the days following the murders, law enforcement launched a massive investigation. Dozens of officers, forensic teams, and behavioral experts descended on Santa Claus. And remember, this is a tiny little town of under 300 people. They weren't just looking to build a case, though. They were trying to understand what would drive Jerry Heidler to commit such a monstrous act. Sheriff Glenn Bradley, the first official to arrive on the scene, later described the house as a war zone, but with the Christmas lights still on. Gosh, this is horrible. But in interviews, he recalled the moment he found the children's presents under the tree untouched. "That's when it hit me," he said. "This was personal. This wasn't random. It wasn't anything. They were trying to send a message." And that's exactly what he was trying to do. Neighbors gave conflicting accounts. One claimed to have heard a shotgun around 3:10 a.m., but dismissed it as a backfiring truck. Another reported seeing Jerry pacing in front of the Daniels home days prior, like he was working up the nerve maybe to do something. Not sure. But a former foster sibling of Jerry, interviewed under the condition of he wanted to stay anonymous, he said that Jerry always held a grudge, and he used to say, "They got rid of me like trash. I'll show them that I do matter." Another added that he said that if I ever come back, it would not be to talk to the Daniels family. So he must have had some time to stew about this and thought about it a lot. So Detective Carl Newman, who led the interview after Jerry's arrest, described him as eerily calm. He didn't cry. He didn't ask why he was there. He just said, "I told you I'd come back." Jerry waived his rights and gave a chilling confession, including details about where each family member was and who he intended to kill first. The most haunting testimony came from 8-year-old Christopher during a taped forensic interview. He shot Mama and Daddy, he said. He told us we had to come live with him or we'd be next, so we did. He told us he loved us, but not like real love, just weird love. What a creep. But those interviews would become the backbone of the prosecution's case and the emotional center of a town to make sense of the evil born from pain. The trial of Jerry Heidler began in the fall of 1998 at the Toombs County Superior Courthouse. It was one of the most emotionally charged trials Georgia has ever seen. Understandably, you can completely understand that the town, everyone knew each other in this town, you have to remember. So everyone knew the Daniels family. Everyone knew the children. They all children went to school together, or they knew the parents. So everyone in town had something to, or an emotional tie, or something to say about the family. So medical examiners during the trial detailed the bullet trajectories. Forensic experts matched Jerry's fingerprints to the back door and the duct tape roll in the car. But the most damning evidence came from Jerry himself, his taped confession. Jurors heard him calmly describe each killing, including his belief that Kim had given up on him. He said, "I wanted them to feel what I felt, forgotten." Those are some eerie words. But after 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for only 6 hours. On October 20th, 1998, Jerry Scott Heidler was found guilty on all counts, including 4 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and multiple weapons charges. He was sentenced to death, and he deserved it. Outside the courthouse, townspeople gathered with candles in remembrance of the Daniels family. A large banner hung from the church that read, "Love never fails." So, that's the story of how that all happened. In the aftermath of the Santa Claus murders, though, many were left asking one heartbreaking question, and I asked the same question while researching this case. Could this have been prevented? So Kim and Danny Daniels weren't just foster parents. They were champions for the abandoned for decades. They went to court. They opened their home to all the forgotten children in Georgia. And they were all broken by the very system meant to protect them. They fed them, they clothed them, they taught them how to love again, taught them how to hope again. But they were not trained psychologists. They were not miracle workers, so they couldn't save everybody. Jerry Heidler wasn't just a troubled teen. He was a ticking time bomb, is what it seemed like to me. Set off by years of abuse, neglect, and just trauma that had never been treated. Diagnosed with severe emotional disorders, flagged in school records, and dismissed by caseworkers. Jerry was proof of how cracks in the system can grow into canyons. And that's real, guys. Because we don't do often enough to help out. And a lot of us just don't even think about this stuff until we hear stories like this. Christopher and Frankie eventually were adopted by a relative of Kim's. Thank goodness. Today they live quiet lives. Christopher rarely speaks publicly about what happened, but in a rare statement given years later, he said, "She loved us very much. She didn't have to, but she did." And that's what Jerry hated most. He did not believe that the love was real. And that's really sad. The town of Santa Claus still decorates its street for Christmas, but there's no solemnity to it anymore. The candy cane poles and jingle bells now serve as reminders, not just of joy, but of tragedy, of what happens when a system forgets its children, of a family that loved too hard and paid the ultimate price for it. Tonight, as we close this story, we remember Kim, Danny, Jessica, and Bryant. Rest in peace. We remember what they stood for, and we ask hard questions, not just as storytellers, but as citizens. And what more can be done to help these children? Because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about prevention as well. So, thank you for joining me for this episode of Twisted Tuesdays True Crime and Mystery Stories. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest corners of humanity. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay twisted. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.